Hello and welcome to our discussion of the article titled The Sources of Success and Failure of Information Technology Projects, Project Manager's Perspective. The first thing that we need to keep in our minds is that this reading is not a conventional reading, rather it's a full-length research article that we are going to discuss. So when we try to read it and we try to understand it, we need to keep this perspective in our mind. So with this brief introduction, let's begin our discussion of this reading. In the introduction section, the researcher is actually trying to set up the background against which he's going to conduct his research, and then he's going to discuss the discussion and the findings and results and everything. So when we come to the introduction part, we can see that he's trying to tell us that organizations are making a large investment in the information technology project, but the organization also realize that the IT investments can be a significant source of competitive advantage, and this is the main reason that organizations are making huge investments in IT projects. However, the author also notes that the many IT investments are actually risky, and as such, they can be considered as a runaway. Runaway means that they do not meet the original expectations of their cost, time, or benefits. The author of the article also highlights that around 20% of the IT projects have either been cancelled before completion, and around less than one-third of the projects were completed on time, within budget, and with expected functionality. The author also notes that if we talk about the larger and more riskier projects, the cancellation rate of these projects is more than double as compared to the smaller projects. So as such, we can see that the IT projects are often difficult to estimate and manage, and some projects are cancelled or their scope is reduced because there are overruns of cost or time, or the project fails to produce the anticipated benefits. So the effective management of IT project risk is actually a challenging task in many organizations, and it is becoming increasingly common for large IT projects to be managed by multifunctional teams. Now, in this section, the researcher is trying to locate the causes of the IT project's success and failure. The researcher notes that many of the organization project involves use of some type of information technology. And if any of these projects fail, then it is very important for the organization to understand clearly that what was the level of responsibility of everyone involved with this particular project. If an organization clearly recognizes the roles of all the parties and understand that what was the major reason why the project actually failed, the organization can actually develop a mechanism that can reduce the probability or the possibility of failed IT projects in the future. There may be situations where we can say that the full blame or the complete responsibility of a failed IT project goes to or shifts to the IT department. And if any such situation arises, it's important for IT department to accept the full responsibility for the failure of the project. However, the researcher also notes that many of the failed IT projects occur not because of the sole responsibility of the IT department. Rather, the failure of an IT project occurs as a result of a combination of various causes and the involvement of the various groups or the entities. Now, these groups or entities can be within the organization and outside the organization. But if an organization wants to make progress with delivering the successful IT projects, the organization has to be very, very clear that what was the level of responsibility of everyone involved in a failed IT project. We have also discussed that it is rarely the case that IT projects fail because of the technological reason, and the people and the organizational factors are the major causes that makes an IT project fail or succeed. Now, anyone who is involved with a failed IT project is going to have a share of responsibility for that particular IT project failure. As a general rule, we can say that various entities bears the responsibility of a successful or failed IT project. Now, what are these entities? These entities can be the business units. that have requested or will use the result of the IT project, the IT project manager, the project champion, the members of senior management, and any vendors or consultants who have participated in the project. In the previous section, we discussed and explained that any entity involved with the IT project actually shares a part of responsibility for the success or the failure of an IT project. And we also discussed or actually listed various entities that can be involved within a project. Now in this section, we are going to discuss the various types of project roles involved in any type of a project, whether an IT project or non-IT project. And these are the entities that will share the responsibility of either the project success or failure. Now, the first very, very important entity is the IT project manager. Now, the IT project manager, regardless of whatever the factors were involved that actually made the project either the success or the failure, he or she is the person who will accept the ultimate responsibility for the success or failure of a project. He or she cannot escape that responsibility. So we must understand that in any project, the role of the IT project manager is actually very, very important, very crucial, because he is the one who is going to be blamed for either the success or the failure of the project. Now, every IT project team, whether it was a successful project or the success or the failure, it must include a project champion. Right? Now, this role of the project champion is actually very important. Now, what the project champion does, the project champion actually accepts the overall responsibility to move the project through the completion. Okay. Once again, the project champion will share some responsibility for either the success or the failure of the project, but the IT project manager will have the ultimate responsibility for the success or failure of the project. Now, IT manager will assume the responsibility of the ultimate success or the failure, right? However, as I told you, that the project champion must share some of that responsibility. The next role, the next project role is the business unit professional. Now, the business unit personnel or professionals they are the people assigned to the project from a business unit of the organization. Now, when we talk about the involvement of these business unit personnel, we must understand that the involvement of these business unit personnel in an IT project must start at the beginning of the project. Now, if the project charter does not adequately provide the goals of the project, and the people in the business unit who should understand those goals, it do not challenge the assumption in the charter, right? Then you cannot expect the delivery of a project that meets their business needs. So in a nutshell, the project charter is actually a very, very important document, and this project charter actually clearly spells out what are the project objectives, what is the project scope, and the responsibilities of various entities involved in the particular project. The next important role is the IT department personnel. Now, all the members of the IT department who are involved in the project, they have a responsibility. Their responsibility is to provide their services at the highest quality level possible. Now, it does happen that the member of the senior management will take a position that an IT project is too technically dense for them to understand, right? So what happens then? If the IT project is actually too technically complex, that is, the members of the senior management cannot understand that, what they will do, that they will only understand it at a very simple level, and as a result, they will often adopt what can only be described as a hands-off policy. Hands-off policy means that a bare understanding. We don't really understand what the project actually entails, what it is going to accomplish, right? So now it is very important that no senior manager actually approve any IT project without a clear understanding of both the benefits and the risk associated with the project. Because if you do so, then actually what will happen that there can be a scope creep. Scope creep means that as the project progresses, then what you were actually intended to achieve, you may have to change it. You may think that okay, this is what we were going to do, but now we understand that we may need to accomplish more. So that would happen if your senior management has no clear understanding of the benefit and the risk of the involved with the project. And at the same time, if your senior management is not aware of both of these things, then it can also happen that the IT manager or the project manager will not be able to complete the project as expected. Now, uh, while we have said that the people at the senior management level should not be expected to understand all the technical issues of the project, however, their one critical responsibility is that they must engage with the business issues related with the project. That's having said that, what we are trying to say is that we are not expecting the senior management to understand the technical issues. However, they must get involved in the project on the aspect where the business issues are involved. So the business aspects of the projects is the responsibility of the senior management, where they must help out the project manager and the project team. Now, the next uh, important role that we are going to discuss is the vendors. Now, if it is an IT project, the vendor can be a software provider. For example, if you recall the case of the Cisco system, the ERP installation, then there were two types of vendors. The first vendor was the software provider, the ERP software provider, and the other vendor was the hardware provider. Now, the role of vendors in an IT project or in a non-IT project is very crucial. Why? Because if vendor promises more, that is either they make a promise to do something that is beyond their capacity or beyond the capacity of the product that they are going to offer, right? Or they promise more to provide the level of the project support, right? Or they promise more to provide the commitment to the project success. That simply means that if they promise anything that they cannot actually provide, they are going to increase the probability of the failure of the IT project. So it is very, very important that their commitment or whatever they are going to provide or whatever promises they make, they must be realistic. Now, what happens when the vendor does not live up to their original promises or their original support that they promise, right? That the vendors will not be blamed for the failure of the IT project. It is the IT project manager that will be blamed, right? So the IT project manager has to keep a close eye on all the promises, all the commitments made by the vendor, and clearly and closely analyze all such promises to make sure that these promises, these commitments are actually realistic. Now, the last important project roles is the consultant. We have already discussed the roles of consultant in various case studies that we have discussed earlier. Now, why do we need consultant? Because of their experience that they have gained while working on various similar type of assignments. So that's why we need the consultant, because they can guide us, they can provide us valuable suggestions and the guidance to complete the project in within time, budget, and scope. However, consultants do have some sort of more responsibility for making the project successful. Why? Because they have the experience. So since they have a lot of experience, they have an obligation so to ensure that what needs to be done in order to guarantee the project success must happen. So their role is actually very important. Now, continuing our discussion from the previous section about the causes of the project's success or the failure, we shall try to understand that why our attempts to gain a complete understanding of the various causes that can make a project success or a failure is actually a very difficult task. The first thing that the researcher notes that when we talk about the concept of the project failure, the concept itself is quite imprecise. And when we talk about various researchers and we study various readings and the material and the literature available, we can see that there is a lack of consensus with regard to what constitutes a project a success or the failure. And as a matter of fact, we can say that most of the research on the project failure is actually not generalizable to a larger project population. What does that mean? It means that whatever the researches have been done, although these researches and these studies have listed so many project success failures or reason or whatever you want to talk about, but however, each after going through all this literature, we can actually come to a conclusion that these results may not be generalized for a large project population. That is, we cannot apply them to a much larger number of IT projects. And there is also a possibility that the different causes of the project success or failure can actually vary based on the type of the project that we are studying. So one type of project can have different type of causes of success or failure, and another type of project can have the different types of causes of success and the failure. Another important thing is that the causes of the project success and failure also depends on in what stage of the project life cycle the project was. So for example, if a project failed in the initiation phase of its life cycle, that the causes of its failure would be different from a project that actually failed at the end stages of the project life cycle. So once again, that also makes determining the causes of the project success or failure quite a difficult task. Now, the researcher tells us that based on the examination of the literature that he has done, the success or failure of a project actually depends on many factors. The first factor is that the project stays on its schedule and on budget. The second factor is that the project meets its desired technical goals. The third factor is that the project maintains a smooth working relationship within the team and the parent organization. Now the parent organization is the one that has actually sponsored the project. And another factor is the perceived quality of the project. That is, a project will be considered successful if it is able to maintain the perceived quality of the project. Now, when we talk about the perceived quality of the project, that means the project team perception about the value and the usefulness of the project's deliverable. And the last factor is that makes the IT project successful is the client satisfaction. If your client is satisfied with the outcome or the deliverables provided by the project, then the project will be considered successful. The author also notes various causes of project failures. Some of these causes are the lack of communication, the unreasonable schedules, lack of right skills at right time, inadequate design, incomplete or unstable requirements, ineffective project leadership, inadequate initial plan as the project baseline, inconsistent application of resources, incomplete testing plan or environment, and last but not the least, inadequate monitoring and control systems. Once again, as we proceed further in the article, the author once again lists some other project success factors. And these factors include first, the author said that the first factor, success factor, is that the project must define and declare the functional requirements and control changes. That is, what the functional requirements are desired and how you are going to control different types of changes that may arise as the project progresses. The second success factor is that the project team or the project itself must be able to develop realistic project schedules. So for example, if the project schedule is not realistic, it is highly probable that the project will be a failure. The other very important factor is that the project must be able to match the skills to needs at the proper time. That is, the project manager, the project team must understand how we are going to utilize the skills and the resources at hand at the proper time. So they do not actually waste it. And then the other factor is the know and respond to the real status of the project. So many times it happens that the project team, in order to show that the project is progressing satisfactorily, they actually lie about the real status of the project. So this is what the author is talking about, that you must know and respond to the real status of the project. So if your project is actually lagging behind the schedule, and this is the real status, then you must do something to actually correct this situation. Then another factor is the establishment and the control of the performance of the contractors. Now these contractors, the role of these contractors is actually very important. For example, if you have a project of building a highway, such as for example M9 highway, and you have actually deployed various contractors to actually deliver various deliverables of the project, then it is actually very important to have a mechanism, right, that could actually control the performance of these contractors. Because if these contractors do not oblige their responsibilities, that means that the important deliverables of the project will not be able to achieve, and as such, the probability of the failure of the IT project will increase. Then another success factor is the meeting the design goals, then benefits the customer, the commercial success of the project. Commercial success means that it is, I mean, your project is not going to just break even. Whatever you invested for the project just provided you the benefit that actually break even whatever amount you have invested. The project must be a commercial success. Commercial success means that you can actually use the result and the outcome of the project at other avenues. Then another very important factor, but not the least, is the future potential of the project. The project must not be a one-time project, so that we can actually use the deliverable of the outcome of the project at one point in time. The outcome or the deliver of the project must be such that it can be utilized in future as well. Now, the author of the article stated that there are 4 dimensions of project success. After whatever factors we have discussed, we can say that there are 4 dimensions, or the 4 major aspects of the project success or failure. And of course, against each dimension, we can actually club together all the factors that we have discussed. So what are these 4 dimensions of project success? The first dimension is meeting design goals. The second dimension is benefit to the end user. The third dimension is benefit to the developing organization. And the fourth dimension is benefit to the community. Now, at the end of this section, the author states that an IT project is considered to be successful if it meets the some of the points listed below. First, the project must be successful for the sponsor / owner and contractors, right? It is very important. Remember what I told you, what's in it for me. So every project must have something for everybody involved in a project. Second, the project must achieve its business purpose in 3 ways: strategically, tactically, and operationally. So I do not need to discuss what is strategic, what is tactical, and what is operational, because I have discussed these aspects many a times in the class sessions. The another criteria is that the project must meet its determined objectives. The other criteria is that it meets quality thresholds. The next criteria is that the project must produce to specification within budget and on time. And then last criteria is that all parties, that is users, sponsors, the project team, etc., are happy during the project and with the outcome of the project. So once again, at the end of this section, the author has actually tried to sum up and have tried to provide us a list of criteria that we can actually comply with, so to see whether our IT project was a success or failure. Now in this section, the author is actually making a reference to an important psychological theory called the attribution theory, in order to understand how the people perceive what were the causes of the success or failure of an IT project. Now, humans are motivated to assign causes to their actions and behaviors. Attribution theory supposes that people attempt to understand the behavior of others by attributing feelings, beliefs, and intentions to them. Attribution theory is actually concerned with how ordinary people explain the causes of behavior and events. According to attribution theory, people tend to explain the success or failure in terms of 3 types of characteristics. Let's take an example. For example, if you are driving a car and at the same time you actually hear a very loud backfire. So what you are possibly going to infer? You are possibly going to infer that this loud backfire or this loud sound came from your car. That is, the sound's attribution is your car. Similarly, let's consider the example of a child performing at a sporting event. Let's say, for example, a jumping or a racing event or something like that. Now, if a child performs better at the event while his or her parents are sitting in the same event, then what we will say? We will say that the cause or the attribution of the child's improved performance was its parents' presence. So the three dimensions of the attribution are actually internality, stability, and globality. Now, if we just read the definition of the internality, internality refers to whether the result of an action is perceived to depend on factors within the person or factors within the environment. So that is, whatever the cause of the success or the failure was, whether the person thinks that this cause was within the environment or within the reach of the person or not. The second dimension is stability. Now, the stability concerns the perception of a cause as stable and relatively enduring, or unstable and subject to fluctuation. So, for example, if you consider the cause of the success or failure of a project as stable, that means that this is a cause that will happen. That will happen in future as well. But if you think that this cause is unstable, that means that it is varying, it is random. It may happen or it may not happen. The second dimension is globality. Now, the globality is the extent to which a cause is perceived to influence just a specific situation or a number of areas in a person's life. So, for example, if we translate this third dimension into the IT project success or failure. So, for example, if someone identifies a cause of a project success or failure as global, that means that this particular cause of a project's failure or success may not only affect this project, this particular industry, but it can affect the other projects that may be done in other industries or may be done in other types of businesses. Now, as discussed earlier, I told you that this reading is actually a full-length research article. So, in this section of the article, the researcher is discussing the findings of its research. The researcher actually conducted a quantitative research in which he gave a questionnaire, the survey, to the various members of the project teams, who were working on different types of projects. And these members of the project team filled out the questionnaire that investigated that what do they think that were the causes of the project success or the failure. So these are the findings that the researcher is actually presenting. Now, the note that what the researcher found as the most important causes of the project success or failure. The most important causes of the project's failure were lack of user support and involvement, lack of properly defined project scope, lack of executive management support and commitment, and poor project management and leadership. Now, the findings note that most of the failed IT projects were between medium and big in size. Okay, and 74.3% of the respondents did not favor that the project failed because the causes were something to do with their organization. Now, remember, when the respondent is actually saying that the cause of the project's failure had something to do with their organization, that means that they are pointing or they are attributing towards the internality. Remember that we just discussed the attribution theory. So this finding actually points that the attribution or the cause of the project failure was internal. Similarly, if you go further and you look at the line where the author is mentioning that just over half of the respondents believe that the same cause would influence what happens to IT projects that they are involved in. That means that the respondents believe that whatever the cause that made the project fail, it is something that is a stable factor. That means that it will happen in future as well. So once again, the attribution of the project failure refers to the stability. Continuing our discussion of the research finding, we note that almost half of the respondents believed that the cause of the project failing had affected their involvement in IT projects or other areas of their work. That means that the attribution had globality dimension. What does that mean? It means that this cause is not going to affect the existing project, or this cause is not going to affect the project team in that particular factor. This cause is going to affect the project team or on the other projects as well as the other projects as well. The next finding, 71.5% of respondents believed that the cause of the project failing had something to do with other people or circumstances. This is the externality dimension of attribution. That means that people perceive that the cause of the project failure was the other people or other circumstances which were not internal to the organization. Then, when the article notes that the 76.4% of respondents agreed that the cause of the project failing was not something that was controllable by them, that corresponds to the controllability dimension of attribution. That means that the people feel that whatever the cause was that actually made the project fail, it was not possible for them to control that particular cause. Then, when we note that the 60% of the respondents considered the failed IT project to be important, this is the degree of importance dimension of the attribution. That means that whatever the cause that actually made the project failed, right? So the people feel that this cause was actually important. Now, going further, we can say that the respondent for IT project success also mentioned various reasons, and the most important reasons mentioned by them were good project management and leadership, effective planning, executive and sponsor commitment, and total organization and project team commitment. We also see that a large majority of the respondents believed that the same cause would influence what happens to IT projects that they are involved in. Once again, what you need to do is that you need to go through these findings. And I have highlighted on under various findings that which dimensions of attribution this finding is pointing to. So when we are reading all these findings, we need to understand that how the attribution theory is playing its part when we are trying to determine the causes of the project success and failure. Here we shall conclude our discussion of this particular reading. After going through the reading, there are some very important points that we would like to note. The first thing is that the professionals working on the IT project do not attribute the success and failure in the same way. For example, when we look at the IT support workers and the executive IT managers and their reaction in this study, we see that the reaction or the response of the IT support workers and the executive managers toward the failure of the IT project was slightly different. For example, when it comes to the IT support workers, they attribute success more to themselves rather than to other workers. However, when it comes to the failure, they do not attribute failure to themselves. When we talk about the business executives, then we see that that is the business executives, attribute a significant amount of failure to themselves. See, right? They attribute a significant amount of failure to themselves. However, when it comes to the success, they attribute a significant amount of success to the external failures. So, as you can see that the attribution of the IT support workers and or the IT people or the IT department and the business executives or the management is actually slightly different. That how they are attributing the success or failure of an IT project. Now, if we talk about the success of the IT project manager, it is actually very critical for the success of an enterprise. And similarly, the success of an IT project is actually crucial for the career growth of the various entities participating in this project. And as we discussed earlier, these entities can involve the project manager, project team, project champion, and so on. Now, it is very important that each entity involved in any IT project must have a clear understanding of his or her role. And they must also understand that how their role is actually going to affect the eventual or the ultimate outcome of the project. Now, similarly, everyone involved in a successful IT project should accept a part of the credit for their success. And same goes with the failure of the project.